take a timeout.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Kenny, and welcome to ESPN Classic's Top 5 Reasons You Can't Blame, a series that takes a fresh look at sports personalities who are remembered largely for their mistakes, controversial moments, or questionable decisions.
63, 62, 13, 12.
With seconds left in the 1982 NCAA Championship game, Georgetown trailed North Carolina by a single point. The Hoyas had the ball with a chance to take the lead when their point guard Fred Brown mistakenly threw the ball to Carolina forward James Worthy. The Tar Heels went on to win the game, and Brown was labeled as the game's GOAT. In this show, we'll count down the top 5 reasons you can't blame Fred Brown for losing the 1982 NCAA Championship game. It remains one of the most replayed moments in American sports. But before we get to our countdown, let's take a look at what happened on that fateful night at the Louisiana Superdome.
Here at the Louisiana Superdome, they're going to be playing before crowds of over 60,000. Those are the biggest crowds to ever watch a basketball game in the United States.
This was the first Final Four where people didn't care how bad the seat was. They just wanted to say, I was there.
The popularity of college basketball, especially March Madness, was raging coast to coast. In the Final Four, the Superdome was jammed when #1 North Carolina defeated Houston and Georgetown beat Louisville.
Ewing puts it in. What do you do against that?
You have the 2 finest teams in the country, and it should be an outstanding basketball game.
This was Georgetown's first experience in the Final Four also. So Carolina was accustomed to probably more big game situations.
There's a lob to Worthy for a stop.
We had James Worthy and Sam Perkins, who are arguably 2 of the best big men to play college basketball.
Oh, Perkins! Oh, Sam, baby!
And then we had Michael, who was a freshman, who eventually started for that team.
This kid's a superstar. He's going to get away with it.
So you're talking about 3 of the best players in college history.
Then, of course, there was John Thompson and the start of Hoya paranoia and the fact that teams were intimidated.
Patrick Ewing was just a wonderful, wonderful defensive player.
Knocked away by Ewing.
John could extend the court with his little foot soldiers, knowing that Patrick was back there to swat anything aside that penetrated the lane.
Pass to Ewing! Oh, my God!
And you've got a guy at point guard named Fred Brown, who at the time might have been the best total basketball player on Georgetown.
Brown puts it up and in, and it is good, and he's fouled.
A sophomore, Brown helped lead Georgetown to a 30-6 record going into the final against 31-2 North Carolina. The game lived up to expectations as John Thompson's special forces battled Dean Smith's elite talent down to the wire.
Here's Worthy, 17 feet, good. Floyd driving baseline, dunk to Patrick Ewing.
It was an incredible basketball game. That was another night where nobody lost.
Brown feeds away to Ewing. Ewing for the dunk.
Neither team was able to gain any real advantage during the game.
The pace is just absolutely furious. You just have the feeling this one's going to the wire.
So it was who's going to have the ball last.
Here's Floyd off balance. It's good.
With just under a minute left, Eric Sleepy Floyd threaded heavy traffic to give the Hoyas a 62-61 lead. Smith called timeout with 32 seconds remaining.
He kind of looked at Michael and said, I think you're going to get you're going to take the shot over here, because he knew they were going to collapse. And it happened, just almost exactly like he said it.
Jordan, yep, he's letting it go. Good from 15 feet.
When he took the shot, no one was amazed that he made it, and we were now waiting for the next great play.
We tried to come down before they got set up to get ourselves in a position where we could score.
Georgetown had plenty of time to come down. Fred Brown at point, Sleepy Floyd sinking toward the baseline on his right, getting his feet together. Patrick Ewing in the hole.
Eric Floyd. That's who we would go to as our scorer. That would have been our primary objective.
They knew they had to keep the ball out of Sleepy's hands or keep the ball out of Patrick's hands.
Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking.
Fred Brown comes down. When he looks over, James Worthy shoots the gap. Now the defense is out of balance. See? Now it's 5-on-4 because Worthy is out of position.
He's so badly out of position on defense for this play that Brown actually thinks he's an offensive player. The place where Worthy is standing on the court, only an offensive player could be standing there.
He turned to wait to look again to see if the wing was open. He just turned and just threw the ball without really even looking.
Oh, way to Worthy! Worthy 5! The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship!
When Fred Brown threw the ball away, and it was sort of that suspended moment of, well, what just happened here?
There was a sense of disbelief. It's just mind-boggling that somehow this pass is just thrown into an opponent's arms.
I felt terrible. You know, this is what you work hard for all a life to actually win the championship.
If you make that mistake in the first quarter, no one would have said anything. Unfortunately, the mistake came at a crucial point of the game.
Fred Brown probably had one of the biggest goofs in the biggest game of all time.
To this day, people still look at that, and they think that maybe Brown cost them the championship. He's not going to live it down, and it will live forever.
In a tight game like the 1982 championship, every small factor becomes critical to the outcome. Many of these factors frame our defense of Fred Brown. So before we start our countdown of the 5 reasons you can't blame Brown for Georgetown's loss, here are a few points that did not make the short list. We call them the best of the rest.
James Madison. The little-known school from Virginia's Shenandoah Valley trailed North Carolina in the second round by a point with a minute and a half left.
If you're a James Madison fan, this is precisely where you want to be.
After James Madison missed 2 jumpers and made 2 turnovers, the Tar Heels escaped elimination 52-50.
Oh, boy, you're talking about a scare. They played very, very well, and we were very fortunate to beat them.
They had a chance, but that's really bad when you get that close to pulling upset.
It took a James Worthy basket, a layup, in the final seconds of that game to actually secure the win.
They survived, you know, but a basket here, a basket there, the Fred Brown thing never happens.
Our final best of the rest, Dean's time. Only the year before, Smith's Tar Heels had lost their 3rd national championship game under his watch.
He always had one of the best 4 or 5 rosters in the country, and he just couldn't ever seem to get over the hump.
1977, that team made this inspirational run to the national final, only to lose to Marquette. 81 represented a great opportunity to do that. The Tar Heels couldn't get it done.
It wasn't our time. Coaches particularly thought Carolina would just have to get lucky, because you keep knocking on that door, you're eventually going to knock the door down.
Jordan jumper from out on the left. Good! And it's intercepted by Worth. Oh, Dean Smith, they're doing it for him.
Freddie Brown's mistake was the break that North Carolina got at that time that gave him the win.
And Coach Smith, that game had lucky breaks, where in other games, the other things happened against him, and he wasn't able to advance or to win that final game.
Fred Brown can't be blamed for the fact that North Carolina was as good as North Carolina was that year. It may have just been the night that they were going to win a national championship.
Patrick Ewing. Eager to impress, the 7-foot freshman's aggressive defense backfired.
Worthy again, he spins and fires. It'll be goaltending against Ewing.
Here was this bird of prey just swooping out of the sky, just knocking one shot after another.
Perkins, he puts it up, takes his own rebound, and that'll be another goaltending call against Ewing. Every basket that North Carolina has, all 4 field goals on goaltending call.
Georgetown wanted to establish itself as the intimidating, dominant team, and they were so psyched up that Patrick Ewing in that game got 5 goaltending calls.
Worthy trying to tie, rejected Ewing. That's his 5th goaltend call.
That's 10 points. That's an astonishing number, an astonishing number.
2 of these are very effective, but now we're reaching the point where you're just giving away too many points.
Ewing is going up, covering that basket, and he's a young fella, can really jump, but he is goaltending.
I was angry. 1 or 2 maybe it might have been goaltending that were close, but the rest I didn't think were.
He could have goaltended 40 shots that night, and the quality of player that North Carolina had was going to keep going at him and keep taking 3 2-pointers.
Best Tar Heel offense might appear to be to just throw it up, let Ewing catch it. The Tar Heels get an automatic shoot.
You can absolutely blame Patrick Ewing for going out and thinking that he was going to intimidate Sam Perkins, James Worthy, and Michael Jordan.
Those calls allowed them to stay close until they found their rhythm.
Out front on Floyd. Here comes Jordan down. Layup off the glass is good.
They could have won that game had Patrick not done that. So the whole team had this kind of overwrought, frenetic energy in the game. And the fact that Fred Brown was subject to it late in the game, you just can't blame one play for that.
That brings us to reason number 4, John Thompson. His strategy at 2 critical points in the game made Georgetown's struggle more difficult. One such decision, enabling Ewing's shot-blocking errors.
We later learned that John Thompson had instructed Ewing to take the goaltending in an effort to try and intimidate the Tar Heels. It didn't work.
At a certain point, maybe you have to take Patrick Ewing aside and say, hey, let's get this in place.
You can blame John Thompson for that because he told Ewing to block it. In a sense, Fred Brown didn't lose it. It was more like John Thompson losing that game. I think some of the goaltending was an interpretation of the officials.
After Brown's turnover with 7 seconds left, Thompson made another pivotal choice. When James Worthy was fouled with 2 seconds to go, he used his last timeout before Worthy, who had converted only 2 of 5 free throws, missed twice.
He could have used it after Worthy missed the second of his free throws. Could have set something up and worked for a little better shot than Sleepy Floyd ended up with.
You've got to let your team know, well, if he misses these 2 shots, this is what we do.
We've seen so many plays in basketball that show that even with a half a second, you can get off a decent shot.
Looking inbound, loops it far up court for George, who catches it, turns around, shoots, and he got it! He hit it! He hit the shot! And the Huskies have won it! Sykes, long pass. Bill Jenkins through 3 for the win! Go! Oh, my! Stop the win! They throw it to the left of the floor. Leitner catches, comes down, dribbles, shoots,
The result could have been different. We had those plays, but we hadn't designed that specific play.
He takes a little criticism because of where he called the timeout. You know, maybe if he hadn't called it and waited and set up a play.
In hindsight, since I know what happened, great, I would want to take a timeout.
Michael Jordan. He was the difference at both ends of the floor. With North Carolina down by a point with 32 seconds left, the team set their strategies during a timeout.
The only thing I knew we'd have is the short jump shot, and after we went through it, and so Michael walked down, I said, Penny, if it comes to you, knock it in.
We wasn't worried about Jordan. We were only worried about James Worthy and Sam Perkins.
Realistically, someone taking an 18-foot, 20-foot jumper, you have to live with that.
I saw Worthy going down the lane, and so I collapsed into him, and I think it was their point guard, Black, that threw the skip pass over there to Jordan.
Goes back to Michael Jordan, jumper from out on the left, good! 63-62.
It's hard to view Jordan in that context now because of what he became. But here he was, a freshman, taking the biggest shot of the game and calmly knocking it down.
Just as critical to his team's success was Jordan's vigilance on defense moments after draining his jump shot.
Fred Brown has got the ball here, and Sleepy Floyd's on the baseline, and he's getting ready to give him a chest pass, when suddenly the Carolina defender standing just inside the foul circle on the left side takes one step to his left and blocks Brown's passing lane. Michael Jordan.
Jordan did a fabulous job and, jumping off his man into that lane.
So he did more than just make the shot to win the game. He also probably made the defensive play to win the game as well.
That brings us to reason number 2, James Worthy. The Final Four's most outstanding player answered the call by exploiting Georgetown's aggressive defense.
Worthy on Floyd for the dunk.
Worthy crashing down and getting to the glass for one-handed slams is something I'll never forget.
Doherty out on the right side. No good. Tap dunk by Worthy.
James Worthy was eating our lunch, and he had the poise. I think he made the difference.
Worthy turns around, scores.
Worthy was the guy that we were looking to stop him. I don't know that we did a good job. I guarded him a little bit, or you could call it guarding him.
Doherty away to Worthy for the dunk.
Worthy is having a spectacular final game. 13 out of 17 from the floor, 28 points.
When we threw the ball inside to James, everybody on our team was gaining more confidence and more strength because every time we threw it to James, something good happened.
We're seeing one of the greatest Carolina performances by a player, win or lose, by James Worthy I've ever witnessed.
Georgetown was losing. Down by a point with 7 seconds left, the Hoyas were in desperate straits.
Georgetown was trailing. And that's of huge significance. It didn't mean they were going to win. It meant they had the opportunity to win.
Being down 1 with 10 seconds to go was something that the 1982 Hoyas did not experience a lot.
With the clock ticking down, to presume they'd score. To me, that is a huge assumption to be making.
Who's to know what's going to happen next? I mean, Brown might have tossed the ball to somebody who could have thrown up an air ball.
Georgetown had been involved in 2 previous one-point games that season. In each case, the Hoyas lost because they failed to execute their offense in the late stages, going 4 minutes without a field goal in one and 10 minutes in the other.
Their aggressive defense caused turnovers, and they got to go 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s. When they had to bring the ball 90 feet, they played a deliberate style on offense. And to hurry up and get a shot, that isn't how they normally played.
There's no guarantee that a Georgetown team that historically never shot particularly well was going to get off a decent shot in 7 seconds.
We can't blame Fred Brown for Georgetown losing the 82 game because we don't know what was going to happen if Fred Brown didn't throw the ball to James Worthy.
Things that happen early in the game can have as much of an impact on the game as the things that happen at the end of the game. But anybody who tries to put all the blame for them losing that game on one bad pass is really sorely, sorely misguided.
The previous season, Fred Brown tipped in a shot at the end of overtime to beat Seton Hall by a point. I don't take credit for that, Brown said at the time. Following the North Carolina game, Brown's teammates tried to remind him of his own philosophy, not taking too much credit or too much blame. I'm Brian Kenny. Thanks for watching.
Anybody could have went in a shell after that had happened and just quit, and he didn't.
The second one, I was smiling, so it was a big difference. The joy was there.
It was just like a cloud that was lifted from his shoulders over his head.
When we won, I was extremely happy for him because I knew that, in a sense, he was vindicated.